So welcome to the first episode of the YouTube page for the Altered Call podcast. What we're going to look to do with these episodes is just give a short update on the material from the previous week's episode, talk about in real time what's going on in my life, some of the ideas that I'm wrestling with, and then move towards pointing into the future and what we're going to be doing there. So, for those of you that don't know, there's about an 8-week lead time between when I actually write and record the episode and when it actually airs. Now, most of the time, the episode is in the shape that I want it to be by the time that it goes out, but having 2 months to sit on the material and work with it, also given that a lot of the information in these episodes are things that I'm actively wrestling with, means that sometimes there are some minor changes. So instead of waiting 2 or 3 months for another episode to come out to explain in detail what's going on, I figured I would update these. People that want the supplementary experience can have it in more real time. People that don't can just wait and listen to the podcast episode. So that's the idea behind what we're doing here. Now, we start in an odd spot because we're in the middle of the discipleship path. So if you don't know what that is, eventually I will be uploading that material to YouTube. But for now, go to the podcast, go to the discipleship path episode, and it'll kind of tell you where we're at in the process. But we were talking about self, and under the idea of self, spirituality specifically. And the main thing that I wanted to hit home here is I don't think your spirituality, I think a lot of people defer to religion instead of deferring to a more authentic experience of God. Instead of pursuing Him passionately, getting to know Him, trying to figure out what He wants from you, instead people just do the thing. They say, I'm going to read the Bible. I'm going to go to church. I'm going to pray this, that, and that way. Instead of saying, what is God telling me to do? Where does He want me to go? What does He want me to do next? And I think that the more authentic experience leads to, I believe the more authentic experience self-replicates. So whereas if you are checking boxes and you say, I'm going to read the Bible for 30 minutes a day, I'm going to do a devotional, I'm going to pray, I'm going to do a gratitude journal, whatever the things are. Instead of just checking the boxes, if you say, I'm going to pursue God because I actually want to get to know Him. I actually want to know what He wants from me. I want to know how He wants me to interact with Him. Then, even if the bar starts much lower, you say, okay, God, I'm going to give you 5 minutes a day. And for those 5 minutes, we're going to go super hard. We're going to do whatever you want me to do. I'm just going to be all in no matter what. But 5 minutes, that's all I can manage because right now, I don't really know what I'm doing. Yes, you are in fact giving less time to God than you would be if you were checking the boxes. But a passionate pursuit builds on itself. So you start with 5 minutes, then you move to 10 minutes, then you move to 20 minutes, and eventually you'll get to the point where you actually have to think about, is this something that I have time to do right now, or is this a passionate pursuit that I need to put on hold because I have too many of them, right? So the idea was just to kind of shatter that glass of saying, we're not doing the religious thing, even though the religious thing in the short term might lead to doing more volume of devotion. We want to break that and get you to possibly a lower level, but a more passionate devotion that will build over time instead of staying static. So the goal is to give God everything you have to give as passionately as you have to give it for as long as you can sustain, and let Him guide you into something else. Don't worry about whether or not you're doing it right. Don't worry about what the checklist accomplishes. Just enjoy being in His presence. Enjoy being with Him, enjoy getting to know Him, and know that eventually that will lead to good things. That was the goal of this episode. Now, because I am who I am, I threw some practical steps in there as well, just to make sure that everyone knows what they should be playing around with, the types of things that they should look for, and the fruit on the other side. That's going to be an important part of this episode is, if you're actually doing these things correctly, you should see fruit. And if you're not seeing fruit, you should think about that. Like, either you're doing it wrong or you're not doing enough of it. So I'm going to try to put fruit at the end of each episode, particularly as relates to a minimum acceptable standard, because I think that that's a good way to evaluate where you are. And the reason that I put that instead of saying, here's my plan, here's what I do, is because I don't want you to replicate my plan. I don't have the answers for your life. Your relationship with God is and should look very different from mine. So I'm very uncomfortable giving people specific advice on a lot of this. Now, some of these areas I am particularly strong in, so I will give strong recommendations, but I'm never going to say this is how your life should look, because your life should look different than mine. Your life was given to you by God. Your skills, your abilities, your passions were all given to you by God for a specific reason. I don't know what that is. I can't help you figure out what that is specifically. And so you're going to have to talk to him. You guys are going to have to figure out what your relationship looks like and how it grows over time. My goal was simply to point you in the right direction, and hopefully you'll get there. So overall, I just re-listened to the episode. It's been a couple months since I've heard it, and I was very pleased with it. I think that the idea of a minimum acceptable standard is a little hard to get into, and hopefully, my hope is that as we get through these episodes, you'll see more and more examples of how they work, and eventually be more comfortable starting your own acceptable standard, minimum acceptable standards. So that's the episode. I really enjoyed it. I have been working with guys who have been doing this material for a while now, and they seem to be all in. They seem to be getting results. They seem to be sharpening in the ways that I would have them sharpen, and that is very exciting. So know that if you dedicate yourself to actually figuring this out, it will go well. Now, one of the things that I'm starting to wrestle with conceptually is I realize that a lot of the things that I want to do in the short term undermine the foundation that Christians have built their faith on. And I know that that's scary. I know that taking something you think is stable and breaking it apart is a scary experience. And I don't quite know what to do with this yet. But I acknowledge that that's what's happening. The goal is then to build up a strong foundation that actually will hold. But in the short term, it's going to feel like you're losing something. It's going to feel like stepping away from the religious aspects of the faith and replacing them with kind of the more experiential, the less firm, right? Because it's a little squishy to say, hey, just go chase after God, chase after Jesus, however you want to say it. That's not really very specific. It's not particularly encouraging because it doesn't have the centuries of tradition behind it. And I understand that, but I think that a lot of the beliefs that we claim to have as Christians, we either don't have because we don't act on the belief, or we don't understand the belief to begin with. So the belief is of no value. Whether it's true or not, because we don't understand it, we don't know what to do with it. So it feels like a firm foundation, but we also don't really want to define it too well, because if we do, then things get a little squishy. So one of the things that I'm wrestling with right now, one of the ideas that I'm wrestling with a lot is, how do I encourage people to take the risk, to say, all right, I'm going to step out in faith. I'm going to take these ideas away from what I think is a firm footing in pursuit of an actual firm footing. And so that is something that I'm wrestling with really heavily right now. And in the next couple of weeks, we're going to have a series starting centered around beliefs. And beliefs are very, very complicated. You like to think that you can just hear the pastor say something and be like, oh yeah, that makes sense, I'll do that. The problem is that's not how beliefs work at all. And I'm very excited to do this series because I think that it will provide a lot of context to men that they've been missing. I think that a lot of men are starting to feel that their faith isn't quite what they thought it was. and don't really know how to deal with that, or even necessarily how to put their finger on what the issue is. And I'm hoping that this series really does help with that, because obviously, as a Christian myself, I don't believe that the faith that we have is wrong. But I think that the Christian church isn't teaching people how to live it correctly. So even if the underlying beliefs are good and are solid, we don't know what to do with them. We don't know how to live them out. We don't know how to incorporate them into our character and turn them into something that actually shapes our reality. And so that series is coming in the next couple of weeks. It's going to be very long. We're going to talk about beliefs in a lot more detail than people want to, but I think it will start to answer some of these questions. And again, we are going to chip away at that foundation. So you are going to have to stick with me a little bit so that we can build the foundation back up underneath, because that is the goal. The goal is that men get together, they challenge each other's beliefs so that the weak ones break and fall away, and the strong ones get stronger and stronger and stronger. And ultimately, I'm playing around with the terminology here, but something like your core beliefs, like let's call it your top 5, your top 10. Those beliefs should be so strong that no one can take them down. No one can hurt them. No one can do anything. Now, you have thousands and thousands of beliefs that are stupid and irrelevant, and that's largely what the beginning of my episodes is kind of making fun of with the I believe statements. But you should have some core beliefs that are the strongest parts of you. And those should impact the world in very real ways. And I think that is the strength of the Christian tradition that people are missing nowadays. And so I'm very excited to get into that. I think that it will, like I said, I think it will provide a lot of context for guys to actually think about what they believe and redefine some beliefs, which will feel scary. Again, in the short term, we're going to attack that foundation, but we're going to replace it with a stronger one. So that's where we're going. I'm very excited for it. Let me know what you think about these videos. The background needs to change, like some upgrades need to be done, but for now, I'm just getting the content out there. I want people to have the additional information if they want it, and that's what I got. Thanks, guys.